They say pride comes before the fall, but sometimes it's arrogance that walks in first and leaves last. I'm Kelly Dawson, 35 years old, single, mother of two, and until last Friday, I was a systems consultant at McKenna Global Solutions, a tech consultancy firm in Boston. I wasn't just another consultant. For 5 years, I was the architect behind every major system integration the firm handled. I'd built strategies, solved crises at 2 a.m., and saved accounts other teams had nearly lost. But none of that mattered when I sat across from Jason McKenna, the founder's son, and my new boss. He didn't see a strategist. He saw a stepping stone. I don't waste time negotiating with low levels. Jason smirked, tapping his pen against the desk like a ticking clock. His office smelled of expensive leather and a cheap sense of entitlement. I stayed calm. Understood, I replied, even though my heart pounded against my ribs. Jason leaned back, confident in his dismissal. We'll handle things without you, Kelly. The client doesn't care who implements the system, as long as it's done. He was talking about Argontech Industries, their biggest client. A $50 million contract. A client I had personally handled for the last 2 years. He didn't even bother making it official. Just dropped the hint, expecting me to resign. And maybe I should have. But I didn't. Not then. Because when you've built your life from scratch, after a divorce that drained your savings, after being left with 2 kids and no safety net, you learn something. You learn when to speak and when to walk away. So I walked. But not how he expected. I left the office quietly, packed my things in a cardboard box, the kind they hand you like a parting gift, and walked out past coworkers who wouldn't even meet my eyes. By the time I reached the parking lot, my keycard was already disabled. I sat in my car, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Not from fear, from anger, not because I'd lost a job, but because Jason, a man who couldn't explain half the systems I'd built, thought he could erase me like I was a line item on a budget report. He thought wrong, because what Jason didn't know was this. 3 months ago, I'd been approached directly by Marissa Hale, the COO of Argontech. She'd called me after a systems crisis no one else at McKenna could fix. We'd worked side by side for 48 hours straight. When it was over, she shook my hand and said, "If you ever want to stop working under people who don't see your value, call me." I never did. Until now. That night, sitting in my apartment after the kids went to bed, I scrolled through my contacts. Her name stared back at me like a door I wasn't sure I could knock on. My thumb hovered over the call button. Did I really want to go up against the firm that had been my entire career? Did I want to risk everything on one bold move? Then I remembered Jason's smirk, his words. I don't waste time negotiating with low levels. I pressed call. Marissa answered on the second ring. Kelly? Her voice was sharp, alert. It's been a while. I'd like to talk, I said, about joining Argontech, not as a contractor, as a lead consultant. There was a pause, a long one. Then, come to my office tomorrow, 8 a.m., bring your portfolio and your rates. I exhaled, adrenaline surging. This wasn't a courtesy meeting. It was real. The next morning, I walked into Argontech's headquarters, not with a cardboard box, but with a contract. By noon, I had signed a 6-month consultancy agreement. Terms: full authority on the project I had originally built, with Marissa's backing, and a clause Jason couldn't undo. Because starting Monday, I wasn't McKenna's employee. I was Argontech's lead consultant, on their most critical project. And the first person I'd be meeting with was Jason. He just didn't know it yet. By Monday morning, the air outside Argontech's headquarters was sharp with late winter frost. Inside, I walked through the glass doors with my badge clipped to my blazer, a badge with my name printed beneath the words, Lead Consultant, Argontech Systems Integration. No cardboard box, No keycard denial. No patronizing smiles. I was here on my terms. At exactly 9 a.m., I stepped into conference room 4B, where the McKenna project team had been invited for a client alignment session. They filed in, chatting and laughing. And then they saw me. First came David, the junior project manager. His eyes darted between me and his notes. Then Rachel, one of the consultants who'd avoided eye contact when I left. And finally, Jason McKenna himself. He froze in the doorway. For a heartbeat, the room fell silent. Jason blinked, forcing a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Well, this is unexpected. I met his gaze calmly. Good morning. Please have a seat. We'll be reviewing your transition plan. He stared at me, confusion flickering behind his polished facade. I'm sorry. Your transition plan? Correct, I said, flipping open the project binder in front of me. As of today, I'm overseeing the Argon Tech system implementation as lead consultant. I'll be coordinating directly with your team to ensure a smooth handover. The word handover hit like a crack in the glass. Jason's smile faltered. Since when are you... He didn't finish. Because right then, Marissa Hale walked in, elegant, composed, carrying a tablet under her arm. Jason, glad you could join us, she said briskly. As Kelly mentioned, she's leading the project moving forward. Jason opened his mouth. No words came out. Marissa continued, cool and professional. We've decided to contract Kelly independently. Given her deep knowledge of our systems and past performance, it was the logical choice. But we have an agreement, Jason stammered. McKenna Global is under retainer. Correct, Marissa nodded. For advisory services, the critical systems contract, however, falls under a separate agreement, which, as of Friday, is with Kelly. I watched the color drain slowly from Jason's face. It was almost poetic. I hope this won't be a problem, I added gently. His jaw clenched. Of course not. The meeting moved forward. Jason tried to insert himself, offering suggestions, asking questions he already knew the answers to, correcting his own staff's comments like a man desperate to prove he still mattered. But every time, Marissa would glance at me, and I'd answer, confident, precise. Not because I rehearsed, but because this was my work. By the end of the meeting, even Rachel was looking at me differently. When it wrapped up, Jason lingered by the door as the rest of the team filed out. Kelly, he said under his breath, his voice low enough for only me to hear. What exactly is your game here? I closed the binder slowly. No game, Jason. You didn't want to negotiate with low levels, remember? His eyes narrowed. This isn't over. I gave a small smile, the kind I'd practiced in boardrooms and courtrooms alike. Number, it's just beginning. I walked past him, heart pounding, head high. But here's the truth. I wasn't just playing a role. I meant every word. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, reviewing the project scope. And there it was. Right in the documentation Jason's team had submitted last week. An oversight. A critical systems error I'd flagged 3 months ago. One they hadn't corrected. If they'd gone live with the system as is, Argon Tech's data would have been exposed to a multi-million-dollar risk. And Jason had no idea. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I could fix it quietly, or I could let them find out the hard way. But then I thought about what Marissa had said after the meeting. We're counting on you, Kelly. Not just for the project, for setting a new standard. So I opened a new file, drafted the correction plan, outlined the potential impact in clear professional terms, and sent it directly to Marissa. No grandstanding, no sabotage, just the work. Because real power doesn't come from tearing others down. It comes from proving you never needed their permission to rise. By Wednesday morning, the shift inside Argontech was impossible to ignore. The correction report I'd sent to Marissa hadn't just impressed her. It had gone straight to the executive board. Within 24 hours, Argontech's CIO called me directly. "Smart catch, Kelly. That oversight could have cost us millions. Glad we have the right person on this." It was subtle, but behind those words was the confirmation I hadn't realized I needed. I wasn't here as a backup plan. I was the plan. Meanwhile, across town at McKenna Global, the cracks started to show. I didn't need inside sources. The whispers came straight from LinkedIn updates and industry chatter. First, 2 project analysts from Jason's team updated their profiles, open to new opportunities. Then came a quiet message from Rachel, the consultant who'd watched me get pushed out. "Rachel, I'm sorry for how I acted. We all saw what Jason was doing. I guess I didn't want to be next. If you ever need a consultant, I'd love to work under someone like you." I stared at the message for a long time. I wasn't naive. People played it safe when they were afraid. But I also believed in second chances. So I replied, "Thanks, Rachel. Let's keep in touch." Because something told me I'd need people like her sooner than I thought. That afternoon, during a review session with Argontech's executive team, Marissa pulled me aside. "You've shaken Jason more than you realize," she said quietly, sipping her coffee in the glass-walled boardroom. "Word is, McKenna's scrambling to retain clients. They're downplaying your role, telling people you were just support staff." I smiled faintly. "Of course they are." Marissa studied me for a moment. "You know, I didn't bring you in to make a statement. I brought you in because you're better than the people trying to bury you." Her words hit deeper than I expected. For so long, I'd believed I had to stay quiet, blend in, make myself small enough to fit into spaces built for others. I thought survival meant obedience, but survival wasn't enough anymore. I nodded, feeling something shift inside me. "Thank you for trusting me." She gave a rare, genuine smile. "Earned, Kelly. You earned this." By Friday, the fallout at McKenna went public. Tech Connect Weekly published a small but sharp piece. McKenna Global faces client transition challenge after lead consultant departure. The article was neutral on the surface, but anyone reading between the lines saw it for what it was. A public acknowledgement that Jason had let the wrong person walk away. I could almost hear Jason's voice in my head. This isn't over. But instead of fear, I felt calm. Because by now, I wasn't just reacting. I was setting the pace. That evening, I picked up my kids from school. Evan, my 8-year-old, launched into a story about his science project. Mia, 10, chattered about her art class. I smiled, letting their voices wrap around me like a reminder of why I'd fought so hard. Mia glanced up as we crossed the parking lot. "Mom, are you happy now?" I blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "You're different. Like, lighter." I looked down at her, heart squeezing. "Yeah," I said softly. "I think I am." Because I wasn't carrying their weight, or mine, alone anymore. Back home after they went to bed, I opened my laptop and checked my inbox. A new message sat at the top. Jason McKenna. Subject line, "Let's talk." I clicked it open. "Kelly, I think we got off on the wrong foot. There's no reason we can't work together professionally. I'd like to discuss how we can align moving forward in a way that benefits us both. Let me know when you're available to connect. Regards, Jason." I stared at the words. Smooth, polished, and completely empty. I closed the email without replying. Because here's the thing Jason never understood. You can't erase people who know their worth. And you sure as hell can't negotiate with someone who's already moved on. The first time Jason underestimated me, I walked out of his office with my head held high. The second time, I walked back in. As the lead consultant, he didn't see coming. By the time the third came around, he wasn't making the mistake of underestimating me anymore. He was fighting back. The following Monday started like any other. I was deep into a project review with Marissa when her assistant interrupted with a note. Jason McKenna called twice, claims there's a contractual issue. Marissa raised an eyebrow, folding the note with a sigh. Persistent, isn't he? You have no idea, I murmured. By noon, Jason's legal team had emailed Argon Tech's contract department, accusing me of breach of contract and non-compete violations. The message was cold, wrapped in legal jargon, but the message was simple. They wanted me out. I sat in Marissa's office, reading the email with a strange sense of detachment. This wasn't shock or fear. It was the realization that Jason wasn't going to walk away quietly. They're claiming you took proprietary knowledge, Marissa said, leaning back in her chair. Of course, they conveniently forgot the part where you built that knowledge. I gave a small, humorless laugh. Typical. We'll handle it, she said firmly. Our legal team is solid. You're not going anywhere. But still, something in me twisted, because this was exactly the kind of tactic that worked on people like me. The ones who didn't have family money, corporate backing, or a safety net. I'd seen it before. Legal threats, quiet character assassinations, pressure until you either cracked or disappeared. And it worked. On the ones too afraid to fight. I wasn't afraid. That night, after I put the kids to bed, I sat at my kitchen table with a folder of documents spread out in front of me. Project plans, emails, performance reviews. I'd saved everything. Not because I expected this, but because I knew better than to trust people like Jason with my future. At 10:15 p.m., I emailed my attorney, Dana Schultz, a sharp, no-nonsense lawyer I'd met through Marissa. Subject, proactive defense. Hi, Dana. Attached are documents showing my work history, client communications, and project ownership at McKenna. Let me know if you need anything else. I'm not backing down. Kelly. Her reply came 15 minutes later. Got it. Already reviewing. Don't worry, I've dealt with worse than McKenna's scare tactics. They have no case. Let them try. Dana. I exhaled slowly, feeling a knot inside me begin to untangle. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person who'd been silenced, threatened, or pushed out by people like Jason. I wasn't going to be another name on that list. The next morning, Marissa called me into her office. She didn't say anything right away, just slid her tablet across the desk. On the screen was an internal memo from McKenna Global. Leadership update. Clarification on client transitions. It was filled with corporate speak about shifting partnerships, realigning strategies. But the subtext was loud and clear. They were trying to spin my departure as their decision, to save face. I scrolled to the bottom, and there it was. We remain committed to providing unparalleled service. Recent changes reflect our commitment to excellence and proactive client management. I met Marissa's eyes. They're trying to rewrite the story. She nodded once. They're trying, but you've already written yours. It should have been enough. But by Friday, I realized Jason wasn't done. Because Friday morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. Rachel. Heads up. Jason's spreading rumors you violated confidentiality. Says he might pursue legal action. Just wanted you to know. And I've got proof if you need it. Proof. Of him lying. I stared at the message, heart thudding. Jason wasn't just throwing around legal threats now. He was poisoning the well. Trying to make sure even if I won, I'd lose. But here's the thing about smear campaigns. They only work if you let them. I texted back. Thank you, Rachel. Hang on to that. We may need it. because I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. And if Jason wanted a fight, he was about to learn the hard way. I don't play games. I win them. By Monday, the whispers Jason had planted started surfacing in places he never expected. Only, they weren't coming from him anymore. They were coming from people inside McKenna Global. And they weren't whispers. They were confessions. It started with a message from Nathan, a systems analyst I'd mentored years ago. We hadn't spoken since I left, but his words hit like a spark in a dry forest. Nathan, I don't know if you've heard, but Jason's been bragging that you breached your contract. We all know it's not true. A bunch of us are tired of his games. If you need statements, I'm in. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Thank you, Nathan. That means more than you know. Because something was shifting. And not just in the story Jason was trying to control. For the first time, people weren't just protecting their own positions. They were standing up. By noon, I had 3 more messages from former colleagues. Alicia, a former HR manager, emailed me confidential documentation showing performance reviews Jason had manipulated before my departure, inflating minor issues, downgrading achievements. They did it to justify cutting you loose, she wrote. I should have said something then. I'm saying it now. I forwarded everything to Dana. Her response was instant. This is gold. The more they push, the deeper they dig their own grave. Let's finalize our response. We'll make the first move. Because here's the truth. Jason wasn't launching an offensive. He was covering a retreat, trying to control the narrative before it slipped beyond his grasp. And by Tuesday, it had. That morning, Tech Connect Weekly published a new headline. McKenna Global accused of retaliation against former consultant. Whistleblowers come forward. The article didn't name me directly, but the quotes from anonymous former employees, the internal memos, the manipulated performance reviews, told the story loud and clear. I sat in Marissa's office as she scrolled through the article on her tablet. You didn't leak this? She asked, glancing at me. Not me, I said quietly. I guess Jason inspired more people than he thought. Marissa smirked. Looks like it. But the real surprise came an hour later. My phone buzzed with a message request. Matt Rhodes, McKenna's head of legal. I opened it cautiously. Kelly, I believe we need to discuss an amicable resolution. Please advise if you're open to a settlement conversation. Respectfully, Matt Rhodes. I showed it to Marissa. She chuckled softly. The house is on fire, and they're trying to sell you a fire extinguisher. I thought about it. A settlement would mean closing the door quietly. It would mean moving on with a check and a handshake, and letting them spin the story however they liked. I wasn't interested. Not in hush money. Not in walking away. So I replied, Matt, thank you for reaching out. I am not interested in settlement discussions at this time. Kelly Dawson. I hit send, my hands steady, because walking away isn't strength when it means silencing the truth. And I wasn't finished yet. That afternoon, I met with Dana in her downtown office. We finalized our filing, a formal complaint citing wrongful termination, defamation, and professional misconduct. As I signed the last document, Dana looked at me across the table. You know, you could have taken the money and walked. I met her eyes. Yeah, but then I'd just be another name Jason erased. She nodded, a flicker of respect in her eyes. You're making a statement, Kelly, and you're not doing it alone anymore. By Thursday, the industry blogs were buzzing. Lead consultant takes stand against corporate retaliation. McKenna's leadership under scrutiny as former employees speak out. Jason's name wasn't on a single statement, but his shadow was everywhere. And by Friday, I received a message I hadn't expected, from Jason. I'm done playing games, Kelly. You've made your point, but don't forget, I know people in this industry. You'll regret this. I stared at the words. The threat was thinly veiled. Pathetic, really. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Dana, because this wasn't a game. This was real. And I was playing for keeps. It's strange how fast power shifts when the truth finally surfaces. By the end of the week, Jason's carefully crafted narrative was unraveling. And this time, it wasn't whispers. It was headlines. McKenna Global faces formal complaint over retaliation allegations. Insider sources confirm leadership misconduct at McKenna. Consultant Kelly Dawson files defamation and wrongful termination case. Every article painted the same picture. A company scrambling, a leadership exposed, and a woman, the same one they tried to erase, standing her ground. But the real turning point came on Monday morning. I was in a strategy session with Marissa when her assistant knocked, handing her a printed statement. Marissa read it, eyebrows lifting slightly. Then she passed it to me. It was an official press release from McKenna Global. Effective immediately, Jason McKenna has been placed on administrative leave pending internal investigation. I read it twice before looking up. Marissa gave a slow, satisfied smile. Looks like someone finally realized who they were protecting. I let out a long breath. Not of victory, but of relief. Because this wasn't about revenge. It never had been. It was about accountability. About proving that people like Jason didn't get to operate unchecked. But Jason wasn't going quietly. That afternoon, my inbox pinged with a message from Dana. Dana. Heads up. Jason's legal team reached out. They're offering to settle and issue a formal apology. I stared at the message for a moment. Then another came in, right beneath it. Dana. It's a strong offer. Financially, significant. But it's your call. I folded my arms, staring at the screen. I could have taken it. It would have been easy. But easy wasn't why I started this fight. I called Dana. Tell them I'm willing to meet, but only if it's on my terms. Public apology, full acknowledgement, and a commitment to enforce new employee protections. No NDAs, no strings. Dana didn't miss a beat. Consider it done. That night, I sat on the porch with Evan and Mia, watching them chase each other across the yard. For the first time in months, I felt still. Mia flopped beside me on the steps, breathless from laughing. Are you gonna stop working so much now? I smiled softly. I'm working on it. Because this life I'd built wasn't something I was willing to trade for any amount of power. The next morning, Dana called. They agreed. I blinked. To all of it? Every word. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I wasn't sure if I wanted to laugh or cry. Instead, I whispered, Good. On Friday, the joint statement went public. McKenna Global formally acknowledges the mishandling of internal personnel matters related to former consultant Kelly Dawson. We recognize the contributions of Ms. Dawson and commit to implementing new ethical standards, employee protections, and leadership accountability measures moving forward. There it was. No spin, no half-truths, just the truth. Marissa forwarded me the link with a single line. Well played, Kelly. But the story wasn't over, because within days, other consultants, women, men, people who'd been silenced, started sharing their own stories. Some mentioned my name, some didn't. It didn't matter. The movement had started. By the following month, McKenna announced a restructuring of their leadership team. Jason resigned quietly. No press release, no LinkedIn post. Just gone. And me? I stayed. At Argon Tech, I was no longer just a consultant. I was part of a leadership team shaping the future of the industry, one built on transparency, ethics, and respect. But more than that, I reclaimed my narrative. I wasn't a footnote in Jason's story. I was the headline in my own. One evening, as I was reviewing project proposals, Mia came into my office holding her school report. "We had to write about someone we admire," she said shyly, handing me the paper. The title read, "Why My Mom is a Fighter." I felt my throat tighten as I read her words. Not because I'd won, but because I hadn't let them take away who I was. And that, more than contracts, settlements, or headlines, was the victory I'd never stop fighting for. Because some battles aren't about taking down giants. They're about standing tall when the world expects you to fall. And sometimes, the tallest thing you can do is refuse to disappear.